And there are things that security are concerned about with SaaS usage. And it's those sorts of things that help a would-be attacker, if an application hasn't been secured. Members of the US government talking about sensitive military planning over a messaging app. Yeah. Most cyber attacks affecting large organizations will originate from...
Hi everyone, just before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to ask you to do two things for us. The first thing is to please subscribe. If you like our content and you think it's worth your while, subscribing is going to let us know that you value the content and that we should continue to make it. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is to listen and listen carefully. The whole intention behind this podcast is to help you. We're here to offer different perspectives, to assist you with whatever journey you're on. So please feel free to ask any questions in the comments or to make suggestions around future topics that we can cover on the podcast, and we'll do our best to get back to you. So without further ado, let's get on with the episode. Hello and welcome to this brand new episode of Head in the Cloud, Certero's brand new podcast, talking all things topical around ITAM, SAM, SaaS and FinOps. So on today's episode, I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Andy Gregory, Information Security Manager here at Certero. Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
Hi, Steve. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good to have you. So, Andy, before we get into it and start talking about all things security, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, certainly, Steve. So I cover all of our security, governance and compliance activities within the company. I also look at how ITAM, FinOps, and SaaS usage can be better intertwined with the security programs here at Certero.
Excellent, good stuff. Well, thanks again for joining us, Andy. And today, really, we wanted to dig into security a little bit and just understand how ITAM, SAM, SaaS, FinOps all play into it. So do you want to kind of just kick things off and just give us a quick overview as you see it on how ITAM and SAM play into cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are separate disciplines. They've each existed in one form or another for a period of time. Organizations have adopted these disciplines at different rates with different maturity levels, for the past few decades. We are in a position now where we do see massive benefits with teams collaborating in the ITAM, SAM, FinOps, and cybersecurity space. So, fundamental to sort of any security program would be understanding the environment that you are trying to protect. And this is where ITAM comes in really well. Security tooling is security tooling, and it's designed as such. It doesn't always give you the kind of holistic view that ITAM tools can. For example, an old Windows 95 machine sort of hidden away in the back closet that no one knows about. ITAM really hones you into that and makes those risks more apparent and allows you to address them. And also from kind of the software side as well, most kind of security frameworks, when it comes to software, really rely on the fundamental question: is the software you are using supported, and is it licensed as well? There's the risk around using unlicensed, unsupported software. So that's really where ITAM and SAM kicks off a good security program. From there, as well as that, we can look to how security has developed, and new and emerging threats are always a big issue. So, those zero-day attacks are always a worry because we didn't know about them yesterday and they've always been there. So quite often in those instances, security tooling isn't quite geared to address those sorts of things. We have seen massive improvements in areas of sort of threat intelligence that looks into those kind of things. But really, when it comes down to it, and a 0 days found, we look to ITAM and SAM tools rather than security tools, for example, to tell me exactly where this piece of software is installed, on what device. And then that allows security to really respond to those kind of threats in a um, more succinct manner.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all about visibility, understanding what you've got, what software's installed, and how that can be used to detect these potential issues.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Steve. And like I said, those kind of unknowns quickly disappear when you gain the visibility that you get from an item and SAM tool.
Yeah. Have you got any examples in the past of where, something's occurred where this type of technology's really come into its own and helped?
Yeah, so I did talk about those kind of 0 day attacks, and if we think back to the WannaCry ransomware, that was a fantastic example where a security tooling wouldn't necessarily pick that up on the day, but everyone knew what the vulnerable piece of software was and what the version was. And in that instance, effective ITAM and SAM could identify where that vulnerable software was installed to allow security to then follow up and isolate those devices and those vulnerable pieces of software.
Amazing. So ITAM, SAM clearly plays a big part in cybersecurity.
They are very fundamental to each other. You cannot have an effective security program if you don't know exactly what's out there that you need to protect.
Right, that's really good. Okay, so why does FinOps matter in security?
Yeah, again, FinOps and security are very intertwined. Security is an allied persona within the FinOps discipline, as is ITAM. And when I really started to first look at FinOps as a discipline, it felt like home to me, Steve. It's a governance framework where there's defined rule sets, naming conventions. It really feels like home for someone like me. Um, Y Yeah, I mean, a good example with where FinOps and security cross over, I guess, have you heard of the color.js
No, not myself.
incident?
No, no, no.
No? Okay, 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 cool,
Probably the
cool.
same
It is,
place.
yeah, 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 it's an interesting story, actually. So, there was a, developer who maintained an open source code base, and it was used globally by, lots of software development companies, some large organizations, um, and he would accept donations for maintaining this code base. And ultimately became disgruntled because some large organizations weren't donating, but ultimately using the code base. So what that developer did was essentially stick an infinite loop within the code. So anyone that was using that code base and had an application hosted in the cloud would see CPU usage spike. Okay, so if you're security, you're not necessarily going to pick up on that because it wasn't malicious. It was already kind of there in the code base. That sort of thing, a bad actor, bad insider, you wouldn't necessarily pick up on. Who does pick up on it is the FinOps practitioners when they see the cloud cost go,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
spike. And in that instance, that can trigger the investigation or the security response. Why all of a sudden is CPU usage on this part of our cloud infrastructure gone through the roof? And it's instances like that where security and FinOps really complement each other and kind of add to the kind of accountability, access control that both disciplines really rely on to ensure effective usage.
Brilliant. And I suppose that's one of the great things about FinOps, right? It just brings, like you say, all these allied personas together that, can work towards a common goal, which, in the case of FinOps is all about optimization, cloud costs, better management of those resources, but clearly some huge benefits from a security perspective as well.
There is absolutely, and cost optimization, accountability, the disciplines all play into each other,
Yeah.
and where effective savings can be made in the cloud, availability can be ensured, those sorts of things. That's really where security and FinOps are essential partners for any organization.
Cool. Excellent. So there's quite an uprising in SaaS and quite a lot of concern around IT. What kind of problems is that causing from a security standpoint?
I mean, yeah, look, probably post-pandemic, even during the pandemic, SaaS has exploded, and it's massively convenient. It drives innovation. The use case for SaaS is there. We see organizations, across the world, across all sectors, that are going for, but a cloud-first approach to their infrastructure. Um, that said, there are security concerns with SaaS and the visibility and sort of usage of that SaaS. So when we think, back a few years in the pre-SaaS era, access controls would quite easily be centrally managed. You would understand what users are using a piece of software. With the innovation that comes from SaaS, there are these sorts of risks, that it is so easy to deploy, it's
Mm.
so convenient, and there are things that security are concerned about with SaaS usage. For example, a study expects this year that most cyber attacks affecting large organizations will originate from the use of shadow IT. So,
Right.
so use of applications that an IT or security department doesn't actually know is being used, and that all goes back to what we were talking about at the start with ITAM and SAM, and having that visibility to be able to form, uh, a proportionate security response. Um, so where sort of SaaS usage and shadow IT becomes a major concern, or a problem for security, is in instances where there may be data residency requirements with some of the data that's hosted. If someone can just sign up to an application using a company credit card, and then they are storing sensitive data in a location that isn't contractually agreed, maybe it's customer data or something like that, that can be an issue, and it's even more of an issue if security departments don't know that that is happening.
Mm. Yeah. And it's interesting you say about SaaS being a primary target for malicious actors in the future. And why do you think there's a shift there? Is it because SaaS is becoming more prevalent, or do you think it's because people are becoming more vigilant to these kind of phishing attacks that, we're all aware of?
Well, no, so it is exactly the point on visibility, and
Mhm.
and it becomes such a more viable attack vector, because you don't have the likes of your IT department or security department securing those applications. Another example would be, kind of, within one organization, they found that on their SaaS applications, 80% of them weren't using multi-factor authentication,
Yeah.
which is sort of common practice now. And for an IT or security team, you would make sure that that was in place before a piece of a SaaS application was going to be used. And it's those sorts of things that help a would-be attacker. If an application hasn't been secured by a security or IT department, that makes it more available to them to essentially make their way in.
Okay, so with SaaS then, visibility really is imperative to be able to manage it.
Absolutely, Steve. So when we think about where we are nowadays with third-party risk management, supplier due diligence processes, these are really important to a security program, and without visibility, um, there are applications and assets that will get missed if there is unknown or unauthorized SaaS usage. So if you don't have visibility, you can't be sure that your security requirements are being met. For example, access controls, that maybe you want to see SSO, MFA in front of an application. And if you don't have that sort of visibility of all of the usage, then you can't be 100% sure that those kind of technical measures are really being enforced. And for companies and organizations that handle sensitive data, there's the kind of data residency requirements that goes with that. It could be devastating for a security program to find out all of a sudden actually there's a large chunk of sensitive data being hosted in a location that wasn't authorized and then being accessed by a whole group of users that they didn't know were accessing about it or maybe weren't authorized. I guess from there, there's the follow on that the visibility gives kind of IT leaders. So it may be the case that it opens your eyes to problems you weren't aware were there. So we always want to look to drive innovation within business, and it may be the case that you suddenly find out, you know, that someone is using a particular SaaS application because there's a business requirement for it that you didn't know was there. You know, sort of good examples of this, Steve, we saw in the news more recently, members of the US government talking about sensitive military planning over a messaging app.
Yeah.
And it's those kinds of bits, really. If IT leaders know, look, there's a requirement for a tool or a piece of software to do X, Y, and Z, they can just look at that and it can go through the normal process. Whereas when you don't have that visibility and you aren't aware, things get missed. And when things get missed, that's when it becomes that attack vector that you are worried about. So, a leading report thinks that this year 30% of all cyber attacks on large organizations will originate from the use of shadow IT.
Yeah.
And that's because of all of those things that we just mentioned. So when IT and security aren't involved in that procurement process, and it just happens to be an end user with a corporate credit card, um, those kind of access controls, uh, data residency requirements get missed because I mean that's not the end user's job. That's they probably overlooked that. That's not something that they were concerned about. They had a requirement and found a way to fulfill it. So there's multiple ways in which visibility can really give a lot of benefit to an organization.
Yeah, I suppose as well, it's that visibility. It would highlight other issues as well, because it's not all just about technology. People use technology as well. And clearly, if people are using apps that they shouldn't be doing to, exchange messages or store data or whatever else it might be, is there a risk there for an IT team or a business to get on top of with staff and
Yeah.
users?
Yeah, absolutely. So it may be the case for an IT department or a security department where they are maintaining sort of a list of authorized apps, whether it be SaaS apps or software, um, and they are just kind of unaware of something new that is not in their purview. For example, I'm not great with marketing. I don't know what tools are like sort of up and coming or that marketing needs to be able to use to be able to create kind of marketing material, that sort of thing. So when you do have a tool that gives you that sort of visibility, then get insights more quickly into, what different departments need, what they're actually using. And then in some cases, there is always the case where someone may not be, just kind of acting outside of policy, but where it actually is malicious. And that visibility can really help there. So if we're thinking about, a bad lever maybe who has found a way to circumnavigate data loss prevention measures, and they are moving data from an organization into cloud storage somewhere. That kind of visibility is really key and invaluable to a security team, because there's only so far technology can get you. Really understanding the people and applying that to the technology is what really helps with a security program.
Yeah. And do you feel people are generally becoming, more vigilant around security and those cyber risks, whether it's through phishing attacks or whatever it might be, because 30% increase on SaaS apps being targeted,
Yeah.
it's quite staggering. So,
It is, and security has come a long way over the past couple of decades. It isn't one person's part-time role anymore. There's entire departments within organizations that deal with security. Um, it is important for those large organizations not to get siloed and to just respond to alerts on an endpoint detection piece of software. Being aware of what is going on across an organization and who can see what and who is using what really brings massive benefits when you are trying to secure an estate.
yeah, it's quite a team collaboration right across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know as a ISO 27001 certified company ourselves, as well as other things, we surely use our own technology to give ourselves a view on where we are and how we're doing. Uh, From a security
Absolutely.
practitioner perspective, how vital is that as part of that process for the accreditation, and how helpful are they?
Yeah, I mean, it is really helpful. You think of security tooling, there is a lot of it, and it's all sort of out there. Um, and I'd never sort of tell someone to replace a security tool with an ITAM tool, but there is things that you get from using kind of an ITAM tool that you don't get from a security tool. For example, those instances where it's an old server using an old version of Linux that essentially you know a, a, an antivirus kind or security product wouldn't pick up on. So in those instances, those assets that are maybe old or just different operating systems, different pieces of hardware, that's all in one place when you're looking at an ITAM tool.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that may not be the case with security tooling.
Excellent. Well, Andy, I've loved having you on the podcast. This is a really good
I've really enjoyed
talk
it.
about. Thank you so much for your time for coming along and
No,
sharing your thoughts on that. Cheers. Okay, everyone. Well, thanks again for watching. We really hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you have, feel free to like, share, subscribe. If you want to get in touch, leave a comment or drop us an email anytime. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.